Hello and welcome back to my little vlog series type thing where I'm discussing some topics regarding music and audio mastering and basically trying to help people sort of FAQ style. This is basically me reacting to lots of questions that I get and trying to compile it into one very simple 10 to 15 minute explainer without any flashy imagery. Just me talking to you and hopefully answering the questions that you have been asking or was hoping to ask. Now, previously I talked about how to listen and feedback on a mastering proof. The next bit I want to go on to is actually the next step, which is compiling the information to create the production masters. So this is a process which goes from the very, very start to the very, very end of the mastering process, kind of happens in the background. When I talk about production masters, what I mean is the actual files that will be used to then upload or send to the manufacturers. So depending on what format you're releasing, this will be a different sort of file. Therefore, the type of preparation that you need to do will be different. But there are certain things which you need before you sign off the mastering that are global for all different formats. So this might sound obvious, but it's not as obvious once you get into the weeds with how you sort of do it. And this is, this is added days, weeks onto projects before because it hasn't been handled properly. So I really hope to demystify this section. So the first bit of information that you need are the artist, the release title, and then the song titles. Now, often they won't be 100% finalized when you start the mastering, but they need to be finished at the end. So by the time we come to the production masters, which is when we actually vend the different formats, the different files that will then be given to you as a package that you will then take on and give to other people, that information needs to be finalized, and that's everything down to the spelling, the capitalization, any sort of weird formatting that you want to put in. You need to make sure that is going to comply to different standards. There are several things you can't put on a CD, for example, that an MP3 will accept, and that's something called metadata, which I'm going to go into more detail about later on, but I'm going to park that for now and talk more about the preparation. And then depending on which formats you plan to release, you really need to have the file specifications ready. Now, this is kind of a heady one because different distribution platforms and different pressing plants, production plants will often ask for slightly different things. My advice is to not follow any rules that you read on any websites or you watch on any YouTube videos, apart from the manufacturer or the distributor that you're working with. They will be able to tell you, and if they can't tell you, find a new one. This is what I always say to people. You shouldn't be sending a master to somebody and then somebody coming back and saying, oh, actually we need it at this sample rate, or actually we need it as one individual thing, or we need it in separate files. When it comes to making the production masters, this should be settled, and everybody involved in the process should understand this. So if you're going to, for example, press vinyl, you need to have a look at the specifications on the website for the broker or the plant that you're working with. And if the broker or the plant that you're working with don't have that, you need to find your sales rep and ask them for those. Usually it'll be a PDF or it'll be a link that can then be sent on to the mastering engineer. And again, if they can't answer that question, red flags everywhere for that one, because that means that you don't know how they're going to be handling your files. Really, they should be specifying that to you, and they should be firm on it because they know what they need to do to get to the next step. For example, if you're making a CD, the format, again, which I'll go into in another video in detail, for sending files around is something called a DDP, Disk Description Protocol, and that's basically like a CD image, like with a CD-ROM image. If you're burning something to a CD, it's that, but for what we call a Redbook audio CD. Park the technical language for now. We'll come back to that later. If the person making the CD doesn't know what a DDP is, run a mile. That means that they're probably just going to do some sort of CDR type thing, and they're going to burn that, and you've got no control over whether the metadata is travelled. You've got no control over if they're going to change the audio in any way. And I've heard horror stories upon that kind of thing, especially in the small independent market. So by the time you go to mastering, really, it'll be good to have this all in hand, because when you come to do the contact form, for example, when you're filing your job with the mastering engineer, they will usually prompt you for all this stuff. And if when you come to that stage you have any questions, the mastering engineer should be able to word that for you so that you can take that to the person at the manufacturing end or the distribution end. Like I said earlier, I'll talk about file types in more detail and some best practices about that, but really I wanted to talk more about the professional practices. And I'm hoping that is useful. To sort of recap, the most important thing is that if there's any specifications you need for all the different formats you're working on, you have that in hand. And if you've got PDFs of it that you can get sent via email, or you can download off a website, whack that in a link alongside the pre-masters that you're sending off, or put it in the contact section of the mastering engineer's website. And again, if the mastering engineer doesn't know what any of these things are, sometimes it might be that you're working with an obscure format and they might need to consult, but usually if you require digital files, whether that's WAV, MP3, any other Apple specific format, anybody with mastering software will be able to vend those from anything they've done audio processing on. Same goes for the DDP. If the mastering engineer doesn't know what a DDP is and you're making a CD, I would say hire another mastering engineer personally, or if it's somebody who's done some sort of work for free, or a mate or something, then you might want to go to a mastering engineer and say, could you just do the DDP? I've actually done this for several people, friends of mine and stuff, where they wanted to have a go to the mastering themselves, or they wanted to get some friends to do it, or they have a studio they work with production stuff and they wanted to keep it all in house. But when it comes to actually making the production masters, they wanted me to do it because they know that I can sign it all off and I can hit all the specs that I'm given. With vinyl, it's a lot more complicated because all the different plants work in completely different ways. The most important thing is to check whether they want it as individual sides, which is 9 times out of 10 the case, as in sequenced A, B, C, D vinyl sides, and also what sort of metadata they might need to go alongside this, because they all have their own proprietary software generally for dealing with this. And usually the minimum they'll need is like a sheet of the tracks and the times at which the tracks start on the sides. This is also a really good way to make sure your sides aren't too long, which is something I'll go to another video when preparing all the way back to the production process really for vinyl, to making sure that the mastering ends up being okay for you. And it's also useful for communication, because you can say, this track called Smells Like Teen Spirit, track 1, side A, there's a glitch, are you aware of this? It's at this time, and it just means that people can speed stuff up, instead of saying at minute, second, this. Anything within the mastering process which makes communication easier, and makes communication possible across different languages, and different sort of temperaments, type of people, ways of talking, ages, all that sort of stuff, is important to have from the very, very start. So I hope that helps. I mean, the idea of this video is more to send you off on a mission of your own to go and find what you need, as opposed to giving you all the answers, because we'd be here all day and I'd be getting certain stuff wrong, so there's no point doing that. If you have any questions, of course, you can put them in the comment section, or you can email me at contact@joecaithnessmastering.com, or you can go to joecaithnessmastering.com to find out more about me. I hope that's useful. This is a video about preparation. We're going to move on soon to do some videos more about technical stuff, or the sort of more specific sides of things. So yeah, I hope you get on well preparing all of your bits and bobs for getting your production masters vended. Cheers.